Most fantasy RPGs give you a choice. Be the hero or be the villain. Avowed asks a harder question. What happens when doing the right thing means breaking every promise you've ever made? Player choice is king in Avowed. At least that's what Obsidian promises. But does this ambitious fantasy RPG actually deliver, or does it fall short? Let's find out. Hey everyone, today we're taking a spoiler-free look at Avowed, the latest RPG from Obsidian Entertainment. I'll be breaking down everything between its roleplay elements to how the game looks and feels to its combat, so stay tuned for everything that you need to know before purchasing Avowed. Let's start with the visuals. Running on Unreal Engine 5.3, Avowed's presentation is vibrant, otherworldly, and filled with environmental storytelling. The character models show an impressive amount of detail, especially in facial animations during key conversations. Although it is a bit comical at times since I don't really expect much variation for these games, but I'd still get a good chuckle out of it. The art direction is definitely a key factor of why I like this game. While I'm not familiar with the Pillars of Eternity universe, I found the Living Lands a fun mixture of fantasy, wild frontier, with touches of the macabre. Funnily enough, just like the key art for this game, a skeleton with a growing ecosystem on it. Avowed's visual design truly shines during combat encounters, where dynamic lighting, fluid animations, and spectacular effects converge to create a visceral fantasy battlefield. I'll get more into how the combat feels later on, but when we're talking purely on how things look, the animation and effects are wonderful, especially the magic. It is decently detailed while still being able to see what's going on in combat. I mean, just look at this fireball! Honestly, the companions are so lucky there's no friendly fire. Overall, performance-wise, I'd say Avowed is pretty solid. Playing on a PC with a 4070, I've been averaging around 85 to 90 FPS at 1440p. I'm using the highest texture resolution and frame gen with quality mode. The frame rate occasionally dips in dense settlements and during heavy combat scenarios with multiple spell effects, but it never has dropped below 60 FPS. I encountered a few minor bugs, but it was mostly related to items dropping and conversation loops. Nothing game-breaking though. Load times are surprisingly quick, rarely taking longer than 10 seconds. One of Avowed's great triumphs is making every weapon feel like the best choice in the game, turning the age-old question of sword and spell into why not both. The game features a ton of different melee and ranged weapon types, as well as a decent amount of spells. I went with some classic combos like a sword and shield for melee and a wand and grimoire for ranged. But if you wanted to use a shield and a gun per se, you absolutely could. Most weapon combinations are completely viable. The only limits are the player and what they want to put up with. I originally wanted to use guns, but it turns out my aim is very bad, so I had to switch. Rather than forcing players into rigid class archetypes, Avowed's skill system encourages experimentation through 3 trees: Fighter, Wizard, and Ranger. Each tree focuses on what you'd expect. Fighters excel at defense and heavy weapons, Rangers master stealth and precision, and Wizards command powerful spells. But the real magic happens when you mix and match. Want to be a spell-slinging tank or maybe a stealthy mage? The system lets you build exactly the character that you want. I really appreciated how this game allows for these hybrid builds. My spell sword never felt like a compromise between fighter and mage. My goal was to keep everything at a distance and crowd control with magic, then use my sword and shield to mow down the rest. The wizard tree definitely could have used some extra perks in the mid and late game, but I understand that they probably wanted people to upgrade the spells that they already have instead of just unlocking new ones. What can I say? I wanted to find some new ways to explode my enemies from a distance, especially those bears. The Living Land bears definitely go under some type of training program because why were they so difficult to defeat? Ugh. So speaking of enemies, in this game, they do not level with you. Your character levels unlock base stats and abilities to enhance the combat experience, but having the right tier of gear is crucial. Damage taken is enhanced with low-level armor, and damage done is reduced if you're using low-level weapons. But how do you fix this issue? You explore the world and gather materials to upgrade at your party camp. The explorable parts of the Living Lands are mostly split into 4 distinct regions, each offering their own unique blend of ecosystems, threats, and mysteries to uncover. While you'll encounter familiar enemies throughout your journey, bears, each area manages to feel fresh thanks to strong environmental storytelling through the ruins, abandoned camps, and hidden passages that hint at the region's history. Now, let's talk about world design, because this is something that Obsidian really nailed. You know how some games either feel empty or or bombard you with icons, Avowed really finds that sweet spot in between. Whether you're scaling the remains of an ancient tower or poking around in some mysterious cave, there's always something interesting to discover without feeling like you're just checking boxes on a map. And everything you find, from crafting materials to cooking ingredients, actually serves a purpose back at camp. One of Avowed's strong points is definitely in its quest design. Even the side quests, you know, the ones that are usually go here, kill that, get your money, they have multiple ways to tackle that, and your choices actually matter just beyond that one quest. The writing is consistently excellent, though I do have one gripe. The journal system could use some work on some of the quests. Sometimes you'll find yourself playing detective just to figure out where you want to go next, because the quest directions can be a bit vague. That being said, if you're patient enough to really dig into these side quests, you'll start to learn how they all connect to each other in clever ways. It's pretty satisfying when you start to notice these connections. As for the main quest, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but let's say that your choices actually do mean things. The decisions you make in the beginning just don't affect your character's story, they shape the world around you. My one piece of advice though, save often. While it's awesome that your choices have big consequences, the game doesn't always give you a heads up when you're about to make a decision that'll change everything. Still, this is a part of what makes each playthrough feel unique. Your journey through the Living Lands really does feel like your own. In Avowed, you play as an endearing envoy sent personally by the Emperor to investigate a strange sickness infecting the land. The character creator offers decent options for customization, though some more in-depth sliders for features would be nice. There are a decent amount of curly and coarse-haired textured styles as well. Like most Obsidian RPGs, you can choose a background that gives you a little insight to your character's past. You can obviously not mention it, but I definitely chose to use my character's unique dialogues every time. Leveling up base stats also unlocks new dialogue options as well. I enjoyed having my know-it-all noble envoy butt into every academic discussion with the intelligence stat. Like I mentioned before, I'm not familiar with the Pillars of Eternity universe. The game made sure to either explain things in dialogue or in journal entries. In the middle of conversations, you can also open a menu that explains history and context to certain words. This feature definitely helped me roleplay my well-read character. In many interviews, Avowed developers said that they wanted to make sure that the player had plenty of choices and avenues to play. Throughout the story and side quests, players can roleplay a complex morality. Everything is not black and white. Does your envoy value loyalty, even if their empire is corrupt? Do you save someone because it's the right thing to do, or do you do it because you are afraid of the consequences if you don't? There's a lot more to cover here, but that would be spoilers. I hope to do a video later talking about player choice in Avowed with spoilers, so stay tuned for that in the coming months. Just know if you enjoy complex choices in RPGs, you are in for a treat. These choices matter and have lasting effects in the story. Your companions also react to your choices, and honestly everything else in this game. They even tell you to go shopping if you have low-level gear. There are 4 companions in Avowed, each with well-developed personal quests and strong character arcs. Kai, a tanky former mercenary, Marius, an experienced ranger and survival specialist, Giada, a healing-focused animancer, and Yatsley, a rather explosive and colorful wizard. Each of the companions have upgradable abilities that you can control in the combat wheel. Companion relationships develop naturally through both dialogue and actions, with the reactions feeling consistent with their established characters. If they approve of your decisions enough, you can be trained by them, gaining a permanent bonus to your base stats. The voice acting in this game is so good. I was truly taken aback at times. Not only are the conversations with the companions well written, but their performances make you feel like you're really building friendships with each of the characters. And if you're a Mass Effect fan, you're in for an extra special treat. Kai's voice actor will sound a bit familiar because that is Garrus Vakarian. The caliber of performances doesn't falter with NPCs either. One particular standout performance for me was Deborah Wilson, and I will just leave it at that. So should you pick up Avowed? If you love RPGs with meaningful choices and don't mind some reading, you're going to have a great time here. It hits the sweet spot between action and storytelling where both your combat skills and your choices matter. I put in about 70 hours, and that was with me 100%ing the first area and not really completing all of the later regions. Honestly, the only thing keeping me back was my time that I had to review this game. You can grab it for $70 or it's free on Game Pass, and honestly, it's worth every penny. The amount of replayability here is wild. I'm already planning my next run and maybe my 3rd run and maybe even my 4th. Who knows? Now, who would want to skip this one? If you're not into real-time combat or grinding for gear upgrades sounds like a chore, you might want to pass. Also, if you're expecting a massive open world like Skyrim, for example, just know this is going to be way more focused. It is an open world, but there's more depth to everything rather than the overall size. I'm giving Avowed a big thumbs up. Despite some minor quirks with quest tracking and the map, the core game is exactly what I want from an RPG. Great combat, meaningful choices, and a world that's actually worth exploring. I honestly can't wait to jump back in and try a completely different build next time. Thanks for watching, and drop a comment below about what type of character you plan to build in Avowed. See you next time!